Okay, so just a quick introduction. So I'm Luke Butler. I'm the Director of Innovation at Qatium. If you've been following Qatium, you've probably seen me a bit posting about Qatium. I'm a hydraulic modeler with a bit of a coding background. I think I've been doing hydraulic modeling for about 12 years or so. Some terrible programming for much longer than that. And that's why I'm very happy to have César along with us, who is a much more skilled coder, one of our product engineers who has worked very closely during the development of the SDK. So I'll pass along to César if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm César. I've been working at Qatium for around 2 years and as a software engineer for around 8 years now. And today I'm going to, as Luke said, I'm been specializing on the SDK and the plugins engine lately. And today I'm going to help you show how to build your first plugin in Qatium.
Thank you so much, both of you. I'm just going to pop up a little poll on the screen here that I'd love for everyone to vote on. We'd love to know how comfortable our audience is with programming. So have a quick vote so that both Luke and César can know kind of how in-depth to go, and I'll hand it back over to both of you.
Okay, perfect. So we're seeing those votes coming in now. And what we'll do is we'll just keep walking through a few things and then we can have a look back as we progress. So I'm assuming most people are familiar with Qatium if you're joining in this session, but if not, just be great to repeat our mission statement, which is to make digital water management available to all utilities, big and small. If you've heard me speak, I'm a big advocate for small or medium-sized utilities or even large utilities to have the best tools they can to serve their customers. And Qatium, we're trying to build a tool that can help utilities, like I said, of all sizes and all skill levels, be able to make better decisions of their network. So we do that in a few different ways. Here you can see we talk about digitalizing their network, creating the quite fun way that a lot of people use nowadays, digital twins to be able to have a digital replica of their system, be able to make smarter decisions or optimize their daily operations, plan, the tasks that they're doing in advance and in a safe digital environment. But we also want the tool to be, work with utilities' ways of working, right? We know, across the world, utilities operate in sometimes a similar way, but either due to regulations or personal preferences, sometimes that can be different. So when you're trying to make, one platform that fits everyone's needs, it can be quite difficult. So we want there to be some ability to, customize and make an open platform. And the SDK is a really large part of that, where you'll see how we envision the SDK, really opening up Qatium to be able to do anything that you need within the platform itself. And so maybe you hadn't heard of the idea of plugins before. Maybe it's a new concept to you, but if you've used Qatium, you've actually been using plugins this entire time. We've developed the software development kit. So that's when we say the word SDK. We've basically developed a library within Qatium that we can extend the application to do certain things. So we actually build our own functionality on top of the SDK. So we will soon walk you through that process of things you can build, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of areas that are already using the SDK within our application. So if you're seeing things like the water main shutdowns or demand spikes or the tools around flushing or even visualizing pressures, they're all plugins within Qatium itself. So you can do some really simple things to really quite advanced simulations. Like maybe you had seen, I did a post on LinkedIn where the first thing that I shared of the plugins was setting off a confetti cannon when the simulation ends. Obviously a little bit silly, a little bit simple. But then I also did later share an example where I made a full pressure management plugin, that would show your pressure reducing valves and the customer serve within it, right? So you can get very advanced very quickly. So what can you do more specifically with Qatium? So we like to break it down into 3 different parts. You've got build, extend, integrate. So if you want to build on top of Qatium, you can. If you want to, create your own functionality on top of the platform, that's possible. Maybe there's existing features within Qatium that you like, but don't meet your exact needs. You can extend Qatium to meet those needs. Maybe there's some regulations or even maybe personal preference. You have that option. And then you can also integrate. So this is talking about integrating and incorporating your own data. So maybe you want to pull in some custom data from like IoT or SCADA, like live information, or you have some personal data or some personal application you want to integrate. So actually going into that a little bit more detail, here's a couple of examples where we talked about build, extend, integrate. So say for building, maybe you wanted to create a whole new plugin, a whole new way of analyzing water age in your network. That would be possible. You could run the water age simulations. You could build, here we've got some examples where you're sharing information about water age and the DMAs and visualization. That's true. Extend here, you could maybe you had a personal preference on how the colors of DMAs should look. That would be possible too. You could trace out the network and change individual colors. You can see, actually, one of our developers built out this DMA viewer plugin. We haven't released it, but we've done it internally to help us see where each of those metered areas start and end. Or you could, as I said, integrate live data. It could be like IoT, so change the way that pumps work or analyze in more detail that information. Or maybe you have a customer management system and for good reasons, you don't want to be bringing private customer information into Qatium. That would make us very happy if you didn't do that. You could integrate, some key value in Qatium, like say a customer ID, and then use a private link to your own services to surface up key customer information or maybe do notifications. So really three sort of pillars in the way that we see you being able to use the SDK to extend Qatium to do whatever you need. With that, we've got quite a bit of extensive Qatium documentation. You can find it at qatium.com/devtools. That will lead you to a whole range of things we've got to help you, be a developer within Qatium. A part of it will be the community, our APIs for sending live data, and also the documentation on the SDK, which you can see here. So the documentation, I'm sure César is probably going to show you part of that soon. But one of the first things you'll probably do once you've learned all about plugins is actually build your own first plugin. And we're going to do a sort of a version of that today. Well, when I say we, I'm going to get César to do it. He's much more capable than me, who will probably be a deer in the headlights if I try to decode in front of everyone. But yeah, so, after this session, you could replay this yourself, follow along from the documentation and try to build your own plugin quite simply as well. And with that, I'm going to pass along to César. Before César starts talking, I think we can see the poll numbers. Can everyone actually see those numbers, or is that just us internally? I guess we can click the show poll button, or...
You can, let me show it up on screen so you can see it here.
Okay. Well, at the moment, it looks like we've got a bit of a mix, leaning towards the maybe some people who aren't familiar with programming to those who are proficient. So don't worry, it's not going to get too advanced in here. Maybe there'll be some bits that are a bit complicated. But the good news is we do have the community that you basically get full access to almost all the developers in Qatium, plus people like myself or other enthusiasts. So even if this does seem a little bit in depth, we are here to help you. And like I said, this first plugin won't be too difficult, hopefully. And with that, I think we can pass along to César.
Okay, thank you, Luke. So basically, we're going to first talk about how does the plugin system work in Qatium, very from a bird's side. So basically, Qatium, for the ones of you that have already used it and are familiar with it, is a web application. So our plugin system also works with the web technologies, right? So you have to build your own plugin using the widely known web text. You can use JavaScript or TypeScript. That's up to your own choice. And then you build the UI and the visualizations in the application using HTML and CSS. Since it's a web application, you can integrate any other of the common web libraries out there. Like you could use React, or you could use Vue, or any other library of your choice, because in the end, it's like Qatium is providing you with a space to put your own little web application inside Qatium that can interact with the digital twin and with the sensor data and so on. So you can, as Luke explained before, build your own functionality on top or integrate with other systems and so on. So Luke, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so basically, when we're writing a plugin in Qatium, as I just said, it's like a small application, but actually it consists of two small applications. One is the UI side. So for example, in this case, we have the flows panel, which is one of the functionalities available as in Qatium. On the left side, we have the UI. And the UI is where you have this panel space on the side of the app where you can add all the content that you think is useful for your use case or for the users. For example, in this case, we're showing the different flows for a network in a histogram. It's up to you. And then on the right side, we have what we are calling the business logic of the plugin, or the engine of the plugin. This is where the actual logic is executing and communicating with digital twin, and being able to pull data from the network and understand where the different assets are located, which are the simulation values, access the AMI data, or the SCADA data, and so on. Both of those sides have to communicate with each other. So we have like a messaging system. It works if you are have ever worked before with APIs. It's like you have to define an API between your UI side and your business logic side, and both sides can cooperate to build this plugin. Okay, I think this is the last step, right, Luke? We can already pass to the live coding.
Yeah, so I think you can share your screen now, sure. And then see how you can get it going.
Okay, so I'm going to let me see that everything is okay. I'm going to share. Okay.
I will also say, while César is doing the demo, there's the Q&A down the bottom, as Yara mentioned. You can put questions in there. We'll either answer them as we go along, we'll get to them at the bottom, but feel free to ask any questions, and especially if there's anything you're unsure of or want some extra information, and I can help César out while he does it. And with that, I'll pass back to César.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll look to say, feel free to ask anything at any point, and that's the idea, to have an understanding. Okay, so basically here I have open Qatium, and I have here the demo network. All of you, when you register with Qatium, you have this network available. It's in Australia, it's Magnetic Island. So here on this side here, these are the plugins that are built in. I have all the plugins available. Given my account, I'm a Qatium employee. Depending on your account, we will have some others or different ones. And for example, here I have this flow panel, this flow plugin that I was just showing to you. We have the visualization here, and we have the panel here. So how can we add our own plugin here? First of all, I'm going to move to the documentation. And as Luke said, we have here your first plugin guide. If you follow all these steps, we're going to do this more or less the same. So first of all, we're going to get a template. So for this template, you have built, for this plugin, you have built a couple of templates, which are like super bare bones code that is very simple to base your work on. So you don't have to start from scratch. So this is public. You can download here. So I'm going to just clone this code. If you have never used GitHub, it's one of the most commonly used repositories for sharing code. So basically here we have our templates. So I'm going to download this. And sorry, like example, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code to edit my code here, just a matter of preference. So how do we get our very bare bones plugin to show up on the window? First of all, you have to like install your template. And after this is over, it will take some few seconds. You can run it locally. So Qatium is running in your computer, but actually you don't have like a connection. That right? This is running on Qatium.add, and your data is stored securely in another machine and so on. So to be able to actually see your code on the Qatium app, you have to enable the developer mode here. If you open your own settings menu here at the top and open again this advanced settings tab, you have this dev mode tab here. So I'm going to wait for a couple seconds until this finishes getting installed to enable it, which will refresh our window and our plugin will be visible. Okay, so this has finished and I can start our plugin. You don't have to worry too much about the exact commands because all the information is available on the documentation, so you can just follow it later on, or you can ask on the community. Okay, so our planning is right now running in our computer, even though we see nothing here. So I'm going to start the dev mode. It will take some seconds to refresh the application. Okay, and now, if you see here, we have this new panel on the side. This says sample plugin. And this is the actual sample that we have just downloaded and executed in my computer. So this code is the one that is running here in this local plugin. So this is like a very simple plugin that the only thing it's doing is finding how many shut-off bulbs are available in the model and closing them from 10 to 10, like just to understand how it works, to showcase how it works. For example, if I start pressing here, the closed bulbs, we can see that some suddenly became closed. This, of course, has no meaning for a use case, with just to understand how it works. Okay, so we're going to see the code. For a moment, I'm going to spotlight here. This is going to be more interesting. So we have a couple parts here. As we said before, we have the engine, which is the actual business logic of our plugin, and we have the UI. And in this case, the UI is a website. Here we have this HTML file. We have some style sheets to define how everything looks and some code to connect both sides together. So here, I'm going to open this HTML file. And for example, for this case, we will do something like extending on the supply sources of our network. Imagine that we want to have a better vision of how our supply sources are working and which is the level and so on. So for example, I can just add here some labels to have like a title, supply sources, and we can have a list here. For example, I'm going to show here all the IDs. So like source IDs. We'll come back to this later. So after saving here, we have seen that this has changed, right? So our plugin is automatically adapting to the code that we are writing here. It's updates in real time. Sometimes if you don't see your changes, it's very complex things that you're doing. You can always refresh the page. We're in beta right now, so not everything is working perfectly yet. So of course, anything that you find that have feedback, you can share in the community. Okay, so we have changed it now. I've changed this UI, but we don't see anything here because this is only the visualization. We have to do some other changes on the engine side to make this make any sense. Otherwise, it's just visuals. So as we said before, both sides are communicating using a messaging system like in API, right? So if we go here to the engine, we can see the basic structure of a plugin. So I'm going to delete everything, or just leave the bare ones here. Okay. So this is basically the most basic thing about your plugin. And you have some methods that get executed by Qatium at any point that something useful happens in the application. For example, we have this run method. This is a function inside the plugin that is going to be executed every time that an event happens in the application, like an asset changes its state, for example, like a valve gets closed or a pump gets started on, that kind of things, right? And every time these events are executed, you get a reference to the SDK, which the SDK is all the functions that are available to be used in Qatium, which here at the documentation you have everything. So for example, if we want to understand how does, for example, the map work, we can go here to the map section and see how to write our map code to interact with the camera, for example, to highlight some of the elements in the network, to move the scene, or we can, for example, add our own visualizations over the map. We're not going to delve this deep, okay, in this session, but just so you're aware, here is where we do all the magic, to say so. And then we have this other function that is called in the plugin code that is receiving the messages from the UI. So anytime that you want to communicate the UI with the engine code, you can use this. So in this case, since we want to see the supply sources in our network and in Magnetic Island, there are some here. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there are a couple here. Maybe there's another on the north of the island, but we'll discover that pretty soon. We can access the digital twin here, and we're going to see which data do we have available. So I'm going to fetch the supply sources using this SDK. So we have this function, for example, to get all the supply sources in the network. And these objects are already typed. So if, for example, I go to the first element here, we have all the attributes that are available inside the digital twin. Like, for example, it's elevation on the real world, the head, the level, if there are some readings, if there's the simulation data, when we have the water rate, for example, or the current head for this supply source, so we can access here all the data. So in this case, what we're going to do is get all the IDs for the supply sources and their current level. So for that, we can do something like with the supply sources, we're going to transform it. So we get an object with its ID, which is going to be the source ID, and its current head, sorry, not level. This is a supply source. It's head. Okay. So in this object, we will have this information. And this is what we're going to send to the UI. So now we're transforming access in the digital twin. We're fetching the data that we find interesting. In this case, which is the ID for each one and its head. And we want to realign this information to the UI side. So we can render it in the way we prefer or do the visualizations that we find useful. So for this, we can send a message with UI.sendMessage. And we're going to send this data. So at this point, every time that something relevant is happening in the Qatium application, we're going to fetch this data and we're going to send back to the other side. There's a lot of depth into this, and regarding how we can actually do these things or optimize, you will get the gist of it as you start developing plugins. And of course, as again I said before, you can always check with the community for more details. Okay, so we have now our plugins going to be sending this information back to the UI. And now we have to receive this information in the UI. So since this is a web application, I can just using here in JavaScript. I'm going to also remove some of the code here from the sample. Okay, so this is what we're interested at. I'm going to just here, write any here. So this onMessage method, it's called every time that our plugin business logic is sending any data from the digital twin side to the UI side. So just to be super simple and check if you're receiving what you're expecting, I'm going to print this in a message, like this is our data, and see what is coming up here. Okay, so I'm going to refresh the window here. And we only care about. I'm going to remove some of the logs here because we don't really need them. Sorry, oops. We only need these ones. Okay, so we have this message here. You can see that it's sent several times. This is repeated because this function is called every time that something relevant happens, and then you have to update accordingly. So here we have these two objects in our data, which are ID, this mainland transfer, and the head is 80. And we have picnic backup well, and the head is 10. So in fact, if we go here to these assets in the map and we click on them, we can see that effectively mainland transfer has a head of 80 meters and the picnic backup well has a head of 10 meters. So we have successfully communicated our digital twin with our UI. And now what we can do is draw with this in the HTML page. So for that, we can use some of the web code and just modify here our HTML. So I'm going to do with query selector, I'm going to get this. Again, this is specific details about how web technologies work. There are a million ways to do this kind of things. You can do it in a different way. That's totally up to you. So you can just do the way that you feel more comfortable with it. And we're going to show here, I'm going to be just super simple here and show the message. We can make it a bit more beautiful later on. But now, if I refresh here Qatium once again, and I open this sample plugin here, we can see, okay, so which are our supply sources? So we have here mainland transfer with a head of 80 and picnic backup well with a head of 10. So we have already built, this is very ugly, of course, if you compare with some of the beautiful visualizations that we have already here in Qatium. But the thing is, you can already adjust your own needs or build whatever you think useful for your use cases very simply with something like with this simple code. You can do another more interesting things. For example, we could work with these values. For example, we can have something like showing which is the average head, for example, for all the assets here. So we can add another element. For example, I'm going to add here average head, and we can compute this. So we will have to get which is the average, which we can get first all the heads, which we can infer from this data here that we have, which is for each one, we're going to get okay, so no problem. Let's see what comes up here, and we're going to show this in this field. Same thing as here. And we want to show this. Okay. So I'm going to refresh here, see what shows up. Okay, so we have like this list of heads, which is 80 and 10. So knowing this, we can already calculate the average, for example. Or we'll have something like average head. We can get these head levels and just all them all together. And finally, we're going to see if this works and have the average head. there are a lot of things here, so we're not in red. So you don't have really to be worried about it, because basically this is the typings that are telling us that we might be doing something weird, because we're doing it very quick and dirty. In real code, you will never do it like this. But for the example, we basically can see how it works here. So we have this average head of 45 between 8 and 10. So what did it here? What have we done here? So we have shown the supply source information in the UI, and we have then grabbed some of the information we received from the digital twin. We did a calculation here. We have did a sum and then dividing. So we have the average, and finally we're showing it here in the UI. So we can have a display of the values as we need, and we can add other interesting values here. So now we have seen the first part, right? That is going calculating things in the digital twin side, and then providing those calculations to the UI so you can display them as you see fit. But what happens when we want to do the inverse point? We want to be able to generate something from the plugin, like having a button to do something useful, and then have the plugin engine do some business logic on that. So to showcase that, we can, for example, add a new button here that is going to move to one of the supply sources, the camera. For example, we can, for example, fly to, I'm going to use this supply source here. Fly to, something like this. So when you click this button, now it's doing nothing because we don't have any code here connected to this yet, but you will fly the camera to the exact point. So for that, we can do something similar as before, and using the same API, I'm going to connect with this button, which we have called fly to, and just, but there's a question maybe or something, Join?
Someone.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do here is send a message to the engine side saying, okay, I want to fly to this asset, in this case, the supply source. So now on the other side, I don't have any here for this example. If we do as before and show the message here, we can do like a message from the UI and show our message. I'm going to reload Qatium here, and when we click the button, it should be showing this message on the other side. And then after that is working, we know that we can react to it. So if we click here, okay, perfect. So we're now receiving this message on the digital twin side, and we can do what we need to do. So in this case, we're going to fly the camera. We're going to move the camera to that asset. So for that, I'm going to use the map API and do a fit to this asset, which I'm going to copy the name because I don't remember it. Mainland transfer, okay. And we're going to make it a bit pretty, so we have some flight duration of a couple seconds. So it's not like instantaneous, it's a bit more elegant. Okay, so let's see if it worked. Yep, it did. So now we have the other way around. We have some content on the UI that can, when it decides it's necessary, can connect to the digital twin and do an operation. In this case, again, this is super simple. It's just doing one command, but this is the basics that make all the functionality in Qatium work, from the water main shutdown to all the analysis in the different side panels, like the customer pressures, for example, which is one of the very well-known ones. This is the same case. For example, when I click this minimum button and it's taking you to the minimum pressure or the maximum pressure in the network, it is doing the same thing. For example, just much more visually rich and complex way. And on the other side, the same thing. when you see here this 31 meters of minimum pressure or this 81 meters of maximum pressure, the business logic inside the digital twin is calculating these numbers and they are being printed back to the UI so it can be visualized. And basically, this is it. I think that with this, this will be fine to get started. And I hope that you have enjoyed this and now are looking forward to see what you can build and share with the community.
Thanks, César. I think that you did a perfect job of showing something that can be quite complex, right? With lots of sending data back and forth. But we have a lot of people in the community that can help run these examples, and I believe we're going to start also having a few, not just the templates, which are the bare bones, but some example, plugins that you can use as reference. And you might have seen on LinkedIn, I shared the pressure management one, which did some more complex logic. I also shared the link to that on GitHub, and maybe we can share that afterwards, or I can share it in the community. So you'll have other avenues to learn. With that, we have a couple of questions that are coming through. So maybe we can, if there's any questions from the audience, just start putting them in. I'll click this one. We've got this first question is how can we share our plugins? It's a really great question. So at the moment, the SDK is in beta. So what we're really looking for is people to start developing plugins, get used to the library, understand what they can build and how they can build it. But if you're a programmer, obviously you want to be able to share that code and get that efficiency by having lots of people to do it. At this stage, like I said, still internal, but we are starting to work on something to be able to share and publish that code. I can't give it away all right now, but I promise you that very soon there'll be an avenue where you'll be able to publish that code, either use it internally or provide it to other people, and it's going to be really then open up the ability for people to extend Qatium. So keep following us. Trust us that at the moment you can try it out, but very soon you'll be able to get other people to use it. One other question here. Let me just get through this one. Can we modify the simulation while it's running? I know, César, if you want to get this one, I think you could answer it two ways. Like, can you run it multiple times, or can you change the simulation partway through?
Yeah, so basically through the SDK, you have some functionality that lets you make actions on the digital twin. So you can set pump's rotational speed, or you can set the pressure, the maximum pressure allowed on a PRB, or you can, for example, close a set of valves. So there are some operations that you can do on the simulation that will affect the simulation. You can change the digital twin and see how the simulation will reflect those changes later on.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But I guess with some of the toolkits for Ethernet, you could stop the simulation and rerun. But we can't do that yet. I mean, if there's a desire for it, maybe in the future we can do that. Yeah, but at this stage, you can react to the simulation after it's done and make changes. Here's another one. Maybe this is going to be a good another one for you, César. Would it be possible to calculate and map your own results, say pressure variation across the sim, and map it?
Yeah, so basically, this is I think the most interesting part of this SDK is that you have all the results available from the digital twin. You can access them through the SDK. We have a limitation right now, and it is that you can access the simulation data from the current point in time. This is one of the limitations we have in the SDK beta. But you can access the information that's available from the simulation, and you can map it, and there are a lot of visualizations available. You can check them in the documentation. Basically, we're using a library that is called Deck, and it has a lot of very powerful visualizations like heat maps, grid maps, another, point clouds that you can use and map in a way that you find more interesting.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that then sort of comes on to this next question. I'll try to answer it, and César, you can tell me if I've got it right or wrong. But the question is, is it possible to use third-party data to represent on the map? And as César was saying, we use DeckGL, which is a visualization layer on top of Mapbox, which is our mapping engine. And you get access to a lot of different ways you can visualize. And with that, you can visualize any information. Most likely people will be visualizing results or information within the network itself, but nothing stops you from integrating third-party information. So there is a caveat there that some data that you get from external sources, where if you're requesting it, you need to request special permissions, but you can display any information on that data if you can get access to it. So obviously things from the model, but you could put all the vehicle trackings that you have, right, and your operators, you could put them live on a map. You could get historic burst information and display those bits of burst information too. So really any data that you have that you can get access to, and any visualization that's on DeckGL, which is quite extensive, you can display it on the map.
Yep. You could even react to it or even modify your model depending on that third-party data. So you have all the toolboxes available for you.
Yeah, see, exactly. That's a really good point, right? Like maybe you could say the burst and the operator's live location. You could react to say, oh, there's a current burst incident. You could make it run the simulation and then also say, okay, which operator is the closest, and notify them. You could integrate that all in one piece. So whichever data you've got a lot of power to do that. More questions coming through. You cannot calculate results across a sim, say pump starts pump. So I'm not exactly certain. You can see the results on the sim across a day. César, I don't know if you know how to answer this one a bit better. Like you get access to all the simulation results and you can see when a pump starts. But I guess, can you access the full sim results or only the current time step? I believe that's a limitation, right?
That's the limitation we have right now with SDK. So Qatium has the results for the whole day, and that we're simulating a whole period of the 24 hours. But through the SDK, you can only access the ones in the current time. So you have to move the timeline to have the plugin be able to access the results. And that's one of the biggest things that we're working on for the next release.
Yeah, so I imagine I'm not as close to the inner workings, but I know it's something that's definitely wanted, is be able to see the full time series of data. And then say, for example, then you'd be able to very clearly see how many times a pump has started and aggregate that data instead of just looking at the current time step. Yeah, it is a slight limitation, but if that's something that you want, you've got a use case, definitely join the community and share that. It helps us give us that, you know what people want to help us build it, right? Qatium's always been about that, product-led decisions and growth. So if someone wants something and we hear it, then we've got a good reason to do it.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty close on time. I just want to share one more screen. I think then Yara wants to spruik some future sessions and things that we need to do. So let me just share this. Then Yara, are you there? I'll put the spotlight back on you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, guys, so that brings us to an end of this session, super successful session. Thank you, guys. Thank you both, César and Luke. And thank you to everyone who joined our very first Qatium community webinar. There will, of course, be many, many more of these. We, in fact, are planning to have one of these every single month with different educational topics. So stay tuned for the next one coming up. We also have monthly Qatium in Action webinars. The next one is coming up on the 29th of May. So for those of you who joined the last one, on those, our Director of Customer Success, David, takes you through one of our Qatium use cases every time and shows you the Qatium platform in more detail as well. And in the coming days, just for those who are here, we'll be adding a webinar channel to our community where you'll be able to rewatch the full webinars, and you can stay tuned for that on our socials and in our community for that announcement, which will be coming later this week. If you're not yet in our Slack community, feel free to join. We'd love to have you there. www.qatium.com/community to sign up, or you can keep up to date with our LinkedIn posts. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to the presenters and have a lovely evening.